Welcome to Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister, Jen. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to the natural world. In connecting to this planet, we also connect to understanding, compassion, and empathy. How can we see ourselves not as separate or above animals in nature, but a critical and integrated part of an active ecosystem? Through conversations with animal advocates, scientists, conservationists, and many others, we look to inspire a new awareness of how and why we connect to animals and nature in order to repair and restore our relationship to the natural world. Hello, and welcome to Kindred. Thanks for joining us again today. We have another really sweet, interesting conversation that I feel like you and I know I've wanted to have this conversation for a long time.
Yeah, I love talking about birds. I didn't know I wanted to talk about migratory patterns, but apparently I did. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
So before we introduce our guest today, I did want to tell you guys about an app that I absolutely love in the celebration of birds and birding. Any bird nerds, alert! This is like for you for sure. But the Cornell lab out of Cornell University has an app called Merlin, and it is so cool, actually. You can get photo IDs of birds, you can do sound ID of birds, and you can explore all things birds on this app. And I use it a lot just because I'm trying to get familiar with the local birds around our area. Because I think it's just weird that I spend a lot of time outside, but often I don't know who's chirping away out there. And especially in the spring and summer when the morning chorus and just like, it's just so cute and sweet and pretty. And so I got this app. Do you have it?
I have not gotten it yet, but I for sure know what it's called now, and I will, but yes.
Oh, Jenny, yes. Okay, get it. Jenny's going to get it. You all get it too. Those of us who really want to know who's twerping, is that, or is it tweeting? Twerping.
Twerping, it sounds too close to twerking, and I don't think...
No. I mean,
and twerp is a negative.
Twerp, but...
Twerp, we called each other that.
Oh, a twerp, like you're a twerp. Yeah, no, I don't mean that. I mean tweeting, that the cute stuff.
Or chirping. I think you were trying to put chirping and tweeting together. So
I just made up a new word. That's excellent. So that's just a fun app that I think is actually super clever. So check it out. So our guest today is Shelly Eshleman, and she is here to talk with us about, obviously, bird migration. Shelly is currently in a Ph.D. program at the University of Delaware, which is local to us, in the Department of Entomology and Wildlife Ecology in Dr. Jeff Bueller's lab. And she is the MOTUS Avian Research Coordinator at the Willistown Conservation Trust. And she will tell us what MOTUS is all about. So I don't want to give it everything away. Right. But really enjoyed this conversation with Shelly, and just got kind of a behind the scenes of just this epic journey that a lot of bird species make every year, twice a year. So let's head over to our conversation with Shelly, and we'll see you guys back at the takeaway. Shelly, welcome to Kindred, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to talk about this subject with you. It's something I've wanted to learn more about for a really long time. So thanks so much for joining us today. If you could just say who you are and what you do, that would be great.
Yeah, my name is Shelly Eshleman, and I kind of wear two different hats in my professional life. I'm a Ph.D. student at the University of Delaware in Dr. Jeff Bueller's lab in the Department of Entomology and Wildlife Ecology. And I am also a staff member at the Willistown Conservation Trust, which is a land trust in eastern Pennsylvania. And I'm our MOTUS Avian Research Coordinator. So I work with research both within my job at Willistown and then that's used then with my work at the University of Delaware.
That's fantastic. And you're here to talk about bird migration, mostly with us today. And I love birds. We both love birds. I love their song. I love their beauty and their sweetness. And I'm constantly amazed by just the astonishing amount of energy they have. And they're like the soundtrack to our lives that I often think we don't even notice. And I think the thing I love about them most are a few things, but their song and their curious and inquisitive nature and just the sheer courage and endurance it must take for them to live every day even. And part of that is this epic migration that many bird species make every year, year after year. And that brings us to you. Could you just talk a bit about why birds migrate?
Yeah, birds are migrating. In the spring, they're migrating to breeding grounds that provide a lot of food to support the nest that they're going to raise that summer. And then in the fall, they're often migrating again to better food resources, where in North America and the temperate zone, there aren't as many food resources in the fall and winter. And so they're moving to follow food, and they're also moving to avoid colder weather. And some people might be wondering, well, why would a bird leave a tropical site in the winter to head to North America? Yeah, and it's just because we have this great abundance of food in North America that's timed perfectly to when these birds are breeding. And so there's this abundance of things like caterpillars that are great fuel for the young that they're raising. And this allows them to have more nestlings on average than if they were to try and build that same nest then in the tropics.
So I guess the main motivation is food-based then. They just and access.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and access to different territories and things like that as well.
So I'm so curious. One of my biggest questions is about what does it take for these little bodies to make such an epic journey over not just land, but then sea, depending on where they're ultimately heading. How do they actually physically do this?
Yeah, they switch from investing all of their energy in reproduction in the summer, then to switching all of their energy into preparing for migration then in the fall season. So birds are going to prepare in a couple different ways. One of the ways is that many bird species go through a molt. So they are going to molt their old feathers from the summer into new plumage so that they can have the best tools for making that flight in the most energy efficient way. And they're also going to build up as much fat resources as they can. So they'll stop at different areas to refuel and to pack on as much energy as they can. So as bird banders will often capture birds in the migratory time period and will blow so that their feathers move away and expose their skin, and we can actually see the fat reserves that they're holding. So something like a ruby-throated hummingbird can almost double its mass just as it's preparing for these long migrations. The other thing that they do is, because they're not breeding, our migrating birds aren't breeding in these wintering grounds, is they're going to reduce their reproductive organs so that they're just as light as possible. And since they're not using them in the winter, then they're able to not have that extra weight. They're just trying to be as efficient as they can be.
That is incredible to me. Both of those things are incredible.
Well, I guess they have to do things like that if they are almost doubling their body mass. So that must be a lot harder to fly, being almost twice as heavy. So they have to suck in other things.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right. So tell us a little bit more about so they lose or shrink the feathers. Actually, they grow new feathers that are lighter, like.
The feathers aren't lighter. The feathers are just new. So if you've ever found a feather on the ground, sometimes you find one that looks really nice, and it you can kind of smooth it with your finger and it looks really smooth, and all of the little pieces of the feather kind of knit together nicely. And then sometimes you get one and you see there's a bunch of like little nicks in it, or it just has kind of been faded, and it's been through a lot over the summer. Especially you have some birds, if you think about where they're foraging and where they're nesting, it's in bushes or areas that are exposed to a lot of sunlight, which wears down their feathers. So when they're making this fall migration, they're trying to have the highest quality feather, so it's going to carry them in the best way possible as they're moving.
That's incredible. I never knew that. And then you were saying that they shrink their reproductive organs. I mean, I just think that is just what animals do is just incredible. And like Jen was saying, that makes sense because you're trying to balance out more fat for your reserves. So you have to lose something somewhere, and they don't need them at that point because they don't reproduce when they fly south, right? They don't have babies and nests down there.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
I just have one question about this whole migrating thing. So if they migrate to follow food, does the food get more scarce in the tropical places? Like if they can't live up here in the cold, like it seems like, wouldn't it make more sense for them to just stay in the warm? Or is it too warm?
It's just that when they return in the summer, or there's this big abundance. You know how we can notice in the early summer and the springtime, there's kind of this time when there are insects everywhere. And it goes from being a time of very low insect abundance to high. And they'll time when they're going to lay their eggs based on when they think there'll be really good food resources for their nestlings. And we just have this abundance of food in the time when birds are laying their eggs. So it's a really tightly correlated system. So then they can have the most food for their young, and then they can raise more young and reproduce more.
Yeah. Is it just connected to insects, or is it also connected to like fruits and berries and things like that too? Or no, mostly just insects that we're talking about?
It varies among species. Different species kind of have their fuel of choice. Like goldfinches are looking for when thistle is really abundant, but many species are looking for those really juicy caterpillars.
Right. That makes sense. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. So the last time we spoke, you were talking about the 4 flyways of bird migration in North America. Can you explain what and where these are?
Yeah, we have 4 main flyways, and they're not, like, the lines can be fuzzy, so it's not a strict ruling, but they're the Atlantic, the Mississippi, Central, and Pacific flyways. And the Atlantic is going to be on the East Coast, and it's bordered by the Atlantic Ocean and the Appalachian Mountains. The Mississippi flyway is kind of in those Midwest states. Your Central flyway is going to go from like Texas, Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana up into the Great Plains in the Prairie Pothole region. The Central flyway is really big for a lot of our waterfowl migration because of those prairie potholes they're often flying to. And waterfowl and songbirds are reliant on kind of different things for when they're flying. The waterfowl are obviously looking for these wetland areas, while many songbird species might be looking for like forested regions or different resources than what waterfowl are looking for. And then we have the Pacific flyway, which is bordered by the Rockies and the Pacific Ocean. So it depends on where the species breeds and what kind of resources they need for where they'll go. And
That's so interesting. And now how do you know about their migration patterns?
Yeah, for these different flyways, people have noticed them from a variety of different practices. You can see the birds flying. Ornithologists would kind of watch as birds are moving. We have banding records of birds that track different individuals' movements. and record different species that are in certain regions at different times of the year. And one of the cool ways that we're able to track birds now is through MOTUS. It's a automated radio telemetry system, and it's something that I work with a lot. And we built out a network through the Eastern Flyway, the Atlantic Flyway. And that allows us to track individual birds because we place a small backpack on them.
Oh.
Yeah, and we're able to follow an individual throughout its migration as it passes along these radio receiving towers.
That's so fascinating. So
That is.
yeah, what do these do? So if they're migrating, the little backpacks, they must weigh nothing because they can't, they don't want any extra weight. They must be so tiny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have them off. Most tags are less than 3% of a bird's body mass. And that means that, for one example, I work with eastern towhees, and we're tracking some of their migration pathways and patterns. We just started that this summer, and they're about 40 grams. And so our tag is about 1 gram.
Wow.
So that it's light enough for them to be able to carry it without it causing any distress for the bird. Because, yeah, just as you're saying, we want to make sure it's not a lot of extra weight for them to carry.
And obviously it's a tiny little tag, but I do prefer the visual of a little backpack. So
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the backpack visual. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We kind of say that it's like a backpack meets a fanny pack. It doesn't go around their wings, which is kind of what a lot of people think when they hear the word backpack. But it's through a leg loop harness because their wings are, of course, moving a lot as they're flying.
Yeah.
And we want to reduce any kind of like friction or stress on the birds. And so it just kind of fits around their hips, and it sits then on their back, and the antenna follows their tail.
Just switching gears a little bit. Actually, not at all. So I'm going to go. Yeah. So sorry. Okay. So that, the Atlantic Flyway you were talking about, that's where we are. We're just outside of Philadelphia area, under the Atlantic Flyway, coming down the East Coast. So I'm really interested in light pollution and what are the challenges this issue brings to migrating birds.
Yeah, many migrating birds are migrating at night, for songbirds at least. Migrating songbirds are migrating at night. And one of the reasons is because they're trying to avoid aerial predators. And so they're able to fly in the cover of darkness. But as they're migrating, they can be drawn into areas of high light pollution. And these are often large cities. And as they are moving into these large cities, they have really tall buildings, and birds can then collide with these large buildings, and or even smaller, like residential homes. We've all, I think, had an experience where a bird has collided with a window, even at personal residences. And so it's a place of mortality for different bird species. For instance, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about the Lights Out initiative for Philly.
Yeah.
And that we had a lot of attention to light pollution in Philly because in October of 2020, more than 1,000 birds perished in a really small area downtown because everything was wrong for migration for the birds that night. It was cloudy and a time when a lot of birds were moving. And so it was a bunch of factors that brought a lot of birds into that area. And unfortunately, many didn't make it. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you explain to us what it is about light that distracts the birds?
Yeah. Well, they evolved these migration patterns during a time where there wasn't a lot of light, and it's a relatively new thing that bird species are dealing with these high light areas at night.
Right.
And birds are using things like the stars and other light-related cues to migrate and to determine where they're going, and it just creates a distraction that kind of draws them in.
Yeah, shame. And that story was brutal in Philly. I think it was up to 1,500 birds that died. You were saying that one night, and
that was terrible.
Yeah, and a good initiative for cities to take on board for sure. So, what are some of the other major challenges birds are facing today? And, even in that, the idea of light pollution, like how can we support them during the times of migration?
Hmm. Yeah. With light pollution, the Lights Out movement is trying to focus on the fact that there are certain times where there are a lot of birds migrating, where if you can reduce light during those time periods, it can make a big difference. Birds are tracked through weather radar. And so there are researchers that are able to see when we're going to have large numbers of birds migrating through an area. And if we can turn lights off during times where birds are migrating in the biggest numbers, it can be really helpful because most birds are migrating based on weather conditions. And so they're making the same decision at the same time often. So yes, turning off lights during migration is very helpful. Another thing would be to provide really good habitat for them while they're migrating. So if landowners plant native plants that support birds moving through a region to help them kind of keep that fuel as they're moving. And another thing would be to keep outdoor cats or to keep cats indoors. Outdoor cats can have a large influence on bird populations. It's estimated that they kill about 1 to 4 billion birds each year in North America.
Holy smokes. Wow.
Yeah. I think we all know that our cats are surprisingly good predators.
Yes, they are.
But yeah, so if cats are inside and birds have like great habitat as they're moving, it makes a big difference for them.
I don't know. Is there a way for Joe Q public to access that information?
Yeah, there are websites. There's something called Birdcast, and it's going to provide some estimates for times of really high migration. And yeah, that would be super useful. I know I see them show up on different social media accounts, like their announcements of days that are going to be really big migration, but I also follow a lot of those people.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe checking in on the Birdcast website to see when will be a big time is really useful.
And just even if like bird lovers do that and post that on their own personal social media so that it reaches more people, because a lot of people care about birds, but it's just not something you would think about necessarily unless.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Is it helpful to put out, I mean, a lot of us do bird feeders, is it helpful to stock that September, October time just to get that rolling a little earlier?
Yeah, I think any kind of food resources that the birds can use as they're preparing for migration is really useful.
What are other challenges that birds, even outside of migration, are facing these days? I mean, we hear a lot about, encroachment or loss, habitat loss, and talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, as much habitat as we can preserve to keep that there for the birds is really crucial. We know that birds need certain types of habitats and that those habitats vary among different bird species, and without areas where they can where they can breed and where they can live throughout the year, they just can't survive. Habitat's crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like the landscape is changing a lot these days for them. So, so kind of a personal question for you. Why do you think that we connect to birds? I mean, why do you think they make their way into our culture? And what is it about them that inspires music and poetry and art?
Yeah. I'm biased. I am very inspired by birds. One of my first interactions that really just captivated my attention related to birds was I saw some homing pigeons as they were leaving to find their way back home. And I saw them as they were circling together in a group of hundreds of birds. And then they found the direction they needed to head. And I was actually helping to transport them to a location as the start of a race. Anyway, we returned home and the birds had beat us home. And I remember just being amazed that they could find their way home after we had driven them to a random location. And just the ability to navigate and to migrate and to do things that we as humans have no concept of and are unable to do, I think is just really amazing. I also think the birds are very cute. Like, we banned northern saw-whets in the fall, and if you look up an image of a northern saw-whet, you can't help but love them. They're like if an owl met a Furby. They're so cute. And I think that they also are just really integrated into our seasons as well here in North America. I know many people think that spring is started when they start to hear the first singing robins or whatever the local bird is that they notice early in the season. And there's just something about their song and their habits that I think we as humans just are enamored by.
Well, you're so right, because I think about it like they sing, we like to sing. I mean, depending on what kind of bird you're talking about, they can talk. I mean, they're hard workers. They have screaming babies, you these moms with these little babies, and they feed them, and then instantly they're screeching to get more food. I mean, these poor mama birds, and they travel, they sleep at night. There is so much about them that I think we can relate to.
Yeah, for sure. And I really agree with you on that. Like those cues that we get from them of the changes, like when you see the Canada geese flying again, it's like that little pull on your heartstrings. Oh my gosh, winter's coming, or just amazing things. Like I've seen like chimney swifts do that thing where they do, and things like that remind me of the homing pigeon story you told, where you just see these magnificent sort of instinctual things that they do that are so captivating. Or like even just seeing starlings when they do those, I forget what it's called when they fly, and it just looks like
a murmuration.
Yeah, it's so incredible if you witness that. It's just it's an awe-inspiring thing. But for sure, I don't know, they're just amazing animals.
They really are. They really are. So Shelly, is that what first drew you to studying birds?
Yeah. I was first drawn to studying birds because, migration, honestly. The feats that birds are able to accomplish that I could never accomplish. I just wanted to know more about how they do that and the ways in which they do that.
Yeah, well, us too. And I so appreciate you chatting with us today, just to kind of give us like a deeper insight to how that all plays out. And thank you so much for being with us today. I really enjoyed talking about bird migration. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great to talk with you guys.
Hey guys, welcome back to The Takeaway. Thanks for coming back to hear us talk all about our really sweet, interesting conversation with Shelly Eshleman. That was great. I've just had a lot of questions for her, and I love to hear about just the kind of the behind the scenes of, we talk about bird migration, but you just don't know what that actually means. So it was very cool to hear her take on that. And I'm so looking forward to checking back in with her after we stop recording. She said, hey, let's check back in 2023 spring and see about some of the work she's doing with her Ph.D. And, the bird, I think, what was the bird called?
Oh, the saw-whet, the towhee. Towhee.
Yes, her work.
Talked about saw-whets, but yeah, towies are the ones. Eastern towies, I think she called them.
So yeah, so that'll be fun to recheck in with her.
Yeah.
But just a couple of things I wanted to just sort of go over. And one was when we were talking about the Lights Out initiative in Philadelphia and the 2020 bird strike that happened in Philly. That really was quite a thing here. We didn't spend a lot of time on it in the interview, but I remember hearing about it in the news, and I'm not sure I was looking it up and I couldn't really find, I don't know exactly what buildings, but people that they interviewed that next morning really felt like it was like end of days type thing. Like
it was really bad. I was actually working at the Schuylkill Center wildlife clinic at the time, so it was a big thing that I knew about because a lot of people bring animals that bird strikes a lot came into the clinic, but
right.
I think a lot of those birds died. They just died.
Yeah. They did die. It was just this. Philly has built a couple of new skyscrapers in the last like 5 or so years, or at least one new one. And there has been an initiative to put in that type of glass that's non-reflective.
Right.
It looks kind of bluish from the outside. Yeah. But this was a big deal, and it was really, really cloudy. And then, she was explaining that birds follow, they follow the stars to find their way and follow the route. So, which is just, again, like, so these tiny birds are flying along and like, well, there's the Big Dipper, let's go left at Orion's belt. I mean, I just don't even know how they do that, but
that's the thing. It actually reminded me of, because, that's how people used to navigate at sea, was by the stars, right, too. Yes. I just was like, we've evolved past that with technology, but they haven't. And just that particular night was the perfect storm in the worst way for those conditions. Like, it was all like a few things coalesced together, and it was just a little disaster for sure.
Yeah, it was really, it just hit home in this area pretty hard. So and then she was talking about the website that you can get on, and I found that it's called birdcast.info, where you can find the weeks in certain months in spring and fall when to just kind of keep your lights off a little extra if you can. And what can you do to support birds during those migrations? So I thought that was really, that was a really great question you had asked. How can we find out about this? And depending on what of the 4 corridors, with these soft boundaries, she was saying that it's like like highways, right? It's like 95,
exactly.
They follow 95 basically all the way down to Florida, and then haul themselves across the ocean and whatever. I mean, it's just crazy, but.
Yeah. And just another thing that we don't normally in our daily life think about as human beings, the impact things like putting our lights on, our outdoor lights, have on nature. It's like, oh, right. Yeah, right. That could make a huge difference. So,
and also bugs and insects, it makes a huge impact on them too. So, let's cheer for our local migrating birds, because they are another species that keeps this planet turning. And what were your thoughts?
I thought it was so interesting, that whole thing about that the weight thing and how they have to pack on extra fat before they migrate, obviously to make these long journeys, and that to compensate for that, their sex organs shrink so that they become lighter. That it's just that kind of thing, how nature functions in that way. It always blows my mind, these ways that it instinctively compensates and sets them up for success. That was one of the coolest things, I thought.
Yeah. Really, and then the feathers, right? How
they get new feathers, like it's like an oil change. It felt like to me,
right? Fresh new feathers.
You got to be fresh.
It is really astounding. It's astounding how evolution works and what they are able to do. We can't do that. Yeah, no, I think that's true. It's just like you're saying, just what nature does to compensate to get them through their pretty difficult days, I have to say. What else? Anything?
I think it was other things that I think you would maybe talk about too, but I loved the bird backpack thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I was glad she said that they're not around their wings, because first of all, I pictured the backpack around the wings, which I thought was so friggin' cute in my brain. But then, that would actually be very difficult for them to fly if they had straps where their wings go. So I was glad she said it really goes around their hips. And that was really cool. Oh, and the other thing I thought was super, super cool. You can talk about the backpacks too if you want, but I never really thought about how do you track migration if it's dark, and that she was talking about using the weather apps to track that, which I was like, because I was just thinking, well, people can stand out there, but if not at night, they can't. So
of course, yeah.
I just thought that was super cool too, how bird people are using weather technology to get better data. I thought that was fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was interesting. It was all just, I loved it. It was great. Yes, for sure. We will end on the image of the backpack. That was cute. And it really reminded me when we talked to Dr. May Berenbaum, where she talked the bumblebee underwear.
Yeah.
The woolly bumblebee.
They're winter underwear, I think. Or
yes, we have winter underwear on bumblebees, and now little backpacks on migrating birds. So
and we learned it's okay to anthropomorphize sometimes, so we can do that.
Right on. And I think again, just the thought of just what birds offer us is just a lot of joy and sweetness and beauty and their song. And I think, again, it's like we were talking about why they have worked their way into almost every culture that I can think of, all the way to Disney, right? So I think it's just, how can we support them on these journeys that they take? And just as a thanks for all the joy, put the bird seat out, turn your lights off, and yeah, let's support these little cuties. So thanks guys so much for joining us today. And we will see you next time. Lots of love.
Bye.
Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find links to our socials, Patreon page, and show notes.